Hi, this is Mary Marshall, and today we're going to talk about the 10 questions that you should consider when hiring a sales manager. So first of all, let's go to the first question, which is how do your customers buy? It's really important for you to understand what type of a person you're going to be hiring based on how your customers generally buy. Do they buy online? Do they buy through retail? Are you selling through a distribution channel? Each of those are very, very different, and the type of sales manager that you're going to need with each of those is different. For example, if you're going to be hiring a sales manager and all of your business is coming in online, that's going to be an internal person. So it's going to be somebody managing people at your location or at a call center. Versus if people come into your store to actually buy something, then you're going to need a completely different type of sales manager. So then if we go, the second question that you should really consider is, are we harvesting demand or are we creating demand? If you remember in your class, harvesting is an enviable position in that you have more than enough customers and they're continuing to come in and you're not even sure how you're going to capture all of them. So a harvesting strategy would be one that is taking care of those customers already coming in. If you are in a demand strategy where you're creating demand, you're going to need a sales manager that is able to move people to go out and create that demand and then, bring it in once they've found it. Very, very different strategies. And a harvesting strategy is going to be more, which we'll talk about in a minute, which is the farmer versus the hunter. And a harvesting strategy is going to be one where it's internal, we're taking care of the customer, we're getting more business out of each customer versus going out there and finding those new customers. So really different skill sets that you're going to need from a sales manager. So question number 3 is the question of, do you need a hunter or a farmer? Now, when we think about a hunter is that person who goes out there and finds the business for you, not necessarily the person who is going to be taking care of the customers in here. This is the one who just loves to go out there, find the new business, and then throw it back to headquarters or to whomever, account manager, to take care of. They just love doing this, and they really get a thrill out of it. Typically somebody who is very motivated by the deal, getting it. They get a big rush, with the win. And if you have a sales team that is predominantly hunters, the manager for that team better have been in their shoes before, or they're going to be very unhappy with that person. And a farmer is the person who is going to be taking care of all of the people there, all of the clients that you currently have, all of the business that you have coming in. Very much of a less aggressive individual, really probably more suited towards customer service versus getting the deal. If you think about car sales for one, those are typically hunters, right? They come after you the minute you walk on the lot. They're going out there and their sales manager is, constantly pounding them to get a deal, get a deal, get a deal. And they're all, very rah-rah, and it's about, the daily sales. A farmer is more of a strategy that we really want to embrace our customer. We want to make them feel welcomed. We know they're going to come here, so when they come here, they want the best experience ever. It's really about more, making sure that they're taken care of versus that the deal is had. And we believe that the deal will come through the farmer method. And in some organizations, you're going to need both. In typical organizations, the outside people are called the hunters, the inside people or the account managers are called the farmers. And so if you have both sets of people, the sales leader should have had a lot of experience with either one or the other, or ideally both, because the care and feeding of each of these is very, very different. One of the biggest mistakes that people make when hiring a sales manager is that they often promote the best salesperson to be that sales manager. This more often than not, is a big mistake when hiring a sales manager. Because if you take a hunter and you say, great, you're so terrific, and now we're going to put you into the sales lead role, they're not going to like it very much, because now they've got to do their hunting through others, and they may be very critical of the other people that are out there selling because they're not doing it like they are. And they like that individual rush that they get from the sale versus having been through others. Typically, your farmer type or your farmer sales type is going to be a more effective sales manager because they understand how to get things done through others. So when you're interviewing, if the person that you're thinking about putting into your lead sales manager role is your lead salesperson, be very, very careful before you do that, because you could end up losing a boatload of sales and also alienating the rest of your staff because they don't like being managed by this person. Managing salespeople is an art. Getting these people motivated to get out there and, go do what they do every day is not an easy task. And so you really want somebody who has had experience or minimally knows how to manage a team and get the best results out of them that you possibly can. The worst thing you can do is hire the mismatch. So you end up getting a hunter-type sales manager for a farmer-type team. They're going to be sitting there looking eyes wide open at this person going, are you kidding me? And they're not necessarily going to be happy. And if they're not happy, they're not going to be productive. And so sales are going to be gone. The fourth question that you need to ask yourself when doing this is, how does your industry normally sell? Okay, if you are an industry that is selling through distribution, for example, you're probably not going to need that hunter type seller. You may need somebody that can manage the distribution rep, which is very different. That's about getting things done through others, and not only others, but people who don't actually work for you. So if you're selling through, a rep industry or distribution where you don't manage these people and your product is one of those that is being sold by them, this is somebody that's really based in relationship-based selling and someone who is very familiar with how to get things done through others and working it so your products are most important to them. If your industry primarily sells online, then the manager of the people who are selling online simply has to manage that day-to-day basis and those people that are internal to you, and doesn't necessarily go out and is not forward-facing. If this is a relationship-based sale, that takes maybe 6 to 12 months or something like that, that goes out there and meets with the clients, works up proposals, and then delivers them, and then walks them through the sale. This is a very different thing. So you're going to have somebody that's patient, that somebody has been through minimally some relationship-based selling, knows about long sales cycles, and isn't looking for that immediate hit. Sometimes those hunters are looking for something a whole lot quicker. So if your industry does sell on long sales cycle, you're going to need to test somebody's patience when you hire them and make sure it's the right individual. And the fifth question says, what are salespeople inside and outside or business development people paid in your industry? This is one of the larger questions. So if salespeople inside and outside, typically outside salespeople make more money, inside are generally taking care of, the outside salespeople are generally getting the business. But you don't want to be paying, very, very differently from the rest of the industry, or A, you're not going to get the kind of people that you would like. Now, typically the way this is going to work is that, let's just say an average salesperson in your industry is making $100,000 a year on average. Your sales manager is going to be making a little bit more of that than that, but they're also probably going to be commissioned or bonused on what the entire team is bringing in, not just what their salary is. So you may have a 80-20 split, 80% base, 20% available in commission structure. The inside people are going to be paid a little bit less than your outside salespeople. And you know, typically it's maybe 20 to 30% less, because the belief is that it's more difficult when you're going out knocking on doors and doing cold calling. Inside salespeople, you know, unless that is their job to do cold calling, generally are harvesting versus the demand strategy. So they're taking care of customers already in. Now, when you look at sales compensation, the outside salespeople are typically compensated more because it's perceived that their risk is bigger. Now, it doesn't mean that they're and the other thing that you want to be really clear about when it's an outside salesperson is that you absolutely don't want to cap what they possibly can earn. So let's say that we have an outside salesperson, and their job is to go out and find new business for the organization. And perhaps we assign them to a particular territory. And we say that you have the potential of earning up to $100,000. But you want this to be commission-based. And so you say your salary is going to be, you know, 30% or 50% of that $100,000. The other of $50,000 or 50% of that $100,000 is going to be based on your commissions or the sales that you bring in. So it's always going to be some sort of a split. The higher risk that the salesperson has, meaning the smaller base that they have, there should be a huge upside if they actually do bring in those sales. If it's an inside salesperson and they don't have the ability to control what comes in, they can only take the calls that come in. They're not actually tasked with making outgoing calls. Theirs is going to be much more highly based on salary versus commission. So it's probably going to be 80% salary, 20% commission, something like that. So if the higher the risk on the outside, you're going to have a higher commission, and therefore there is no cap on it. So one of the things that you want to be careful of in putting together your sales plan is that you are incenting the right behavior, meaning I want, you know, new business in this particular territory. I want it to grow from this point, you know, and that's what you're going to get paid on. One of the downsides of a commission-based sales person who's in a particular territory, if they've been there for a long time, they know who the customers are in the area, and therefore, you know, they've worked these accounts for years. They've got a lot of business coming in, and so if you just raise their quota every year 10%, 15%, they know how to go get that from their current customers. If, on the other hand, you want them to get new customers so that they don't get lazy, that's when you want to start giving them a larger commission on those new customers and a smaller commission on those existing customers. So, for example, you might set up a plan that says, here's your territory. For new customers, you get, you know, 20% commission. For existing customers, you get 10% commission. And for new customers, you get that 20% for the first year or 2 years. But eventually the commission fades out or gets smaller and becomes a house account, because that's when really you're going to transition it over to an account manager or an internal person who is going to be taking care of it for them. Now, one of the things you have to be really careful of is if you are paying a very high commission and a very low salary, make sure that it's enough for somebody to at least live on and pay their bills. If they're always worried about whether or not they're going to have enough to pay their basic bills, their mortgage, their rent, you know, their food, they're probably eventually going to look for another job because they're going to be stressed. Now, on the other hand, when I have salespeople that are, you know, very highly motivated hunters, when they buy a new car or something, I'm like, good, now they've got another payment that they're going to have to, you know, work a little bit harder to get. So anyway, just be really thoughtful about, you know, the territories, what other people are paid in the industry. For example, in real estate, it's, you know, almost nothing in a base and total commission. You don't want to start paying 80% salary and 20% commission, because you're going to be completely different. People will come over to you. They'll be less motivated to go out there. they might really be attracted to come to you, but now they're not going to be getting the sales because why bother? They're getting this nice big salary. So just be, very cognizant of what other people are paid. You want to be fair. You don't want to be the low ball because no one will want to come to work for you. Again, you don't want to be on the very high end of that either, unless it's for some reason very, very difficult to find people in your industry. Number 6 is looking at, the question is, what behaviors or outcomes are you trying to increase? Now, this is a really interesting question when you put together these compensation packages, and also when you're trying to figure out what sales manager you should be hiring. So if you're trying to train your people to go out there and get more business, in other words, not just take what comes in automatically, then you're going to have somebody who has familiarity with approaching people who have never bought from you before, whether that's online marketing and then following up on those leads, whether it's going to trade shows, whether it's making outbound calls, somebody who has to not be afraid to ask the question, would you like to buy from us, right? After having answered all the questions about whether it makes sense for this person to buy from you. So there's a certain level of finesse that needs to happen with this. And this is people who are generally outgoing, although introverts can totally be great salespeople as well. And you want to be clear that if you are going to be training a salesperson up from scratch, good luck with that, because you don't know if they have the ability to handle the rejection. Sales is all about rejection and overcoming that. And some people are just not comfortable there, and that's perfectly okay. So if you have somebody who's, fairly risk tolerant and fairly outgoing and motivated by money and or the good outcome that your particular product has, they've probably got the temperament to become a salesperson. And you also really want to test and see if they've done this before. So where have they sold before? What have they done? Did they grow the territory? One of the questions I always ask when I'm hiring salespeople or sales managers is to give me a W-2. I want to see if they really did earn what they said they were going to earn. Unfortunately, you have to understand that a lot of salespeople exaggerate, so you want to be clear that they did meet the quota that they said they did. All salespeople, whether internal or external, should be put on some sort of a quota. I want X amount of dollars, X amount of new clients, X amount of products sold, whatever it might be very specific about what you want, or you're going to be really unhappy with what you get. I always recommend having an annual quota for both sales manager and salespeople, and also for account managers, the farmer types. And what I typically do is have them, I tell them, well, I want a 10% or 20% increase over what we did last year in this particular territory or with this particular product, whatever it might be. And then I ask them to put together a sales plan for me. I want to see how they think and what they've come up with. And that is more important than what I think. And then I sit down with them and I look at their plan and I negotiate with them on, if they say, well, there's no way I can hit this number, but I can hit this number, and then we rework the plan. But it's far, far better for them to have come up with that plan than for me to, because they will be committed to it, and now I get to hold them accountable to their own plan. And a sales manager who is not used to holding salespeople accountable is not necessarily somebody you're going to want to hire, because wrangling salespeople is a little bit like herding cats. And so you're going to want somebody who's not afraid to say, hey, you said you were going to do this. What happened? Why didn't you? And it's kind of like you have to be on them, particularly when they're new. Now, if you are looking for them to get more business out of a current client, well, that's a different kind of behavior that you're looking for. That's about building relationship, being able to ask the question after the relationship is built. So just really be thinking about what types of behaviors am I looking for, and where has this salesperson or this sales manager done this before. Sometimes it's, team selling. You've got 3 or 4 people that are on a team and they're involved in the territory. So, can these people work together? versus the independent operator, typically the hunter.